Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Okay, Pete, welcome back. We've got another week. What do we have on the agenda today?
All right, Ethan. So today we are going to be talking about quite possibly yours and my current favorite wrestler turned actor, John Cena in The Peacemaker.
Spoiler alert. I love The Peacemaker.
Spoiler alert. I was meh about it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a good... like James Gunn's other work, I think what he's done is he's managed to find... If you manage to look a little deeper at the group dynamic, he's managed to find subtlety and nuance in a place where you wouldn't expect it to be.
I agree.
Which is, a testament to James Gunn's skills as a writer, as a director. But I also think that it was a little bit, gory and superfluous for the sake of being gory and superfluous.
Do you want to give just a high-level background in terms of how we actually made it to The Peacemaker as a standalone series?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The history of the Suicide Squad is as follows. There was the original Suicide Squad, which starred Margot Robbie, obviously, Will Smith as Deadshot, and the third quote-unquote pillar would have been Jared Leto as the Joker.
The Joker, yeah.
And by far, I think the worst depiction of the Joker that we've seen anywhere. Honestly, I would take Cesar Romero's campy Joker over Jared Leto's terrible Joker any day of the week.
Very, very hard, though, to be fair to Jared Leto, very, very hard act to follow, because the Joker has been played so iconically in the past, by Heath Ledger, right? So, you almost have to find some way to, distinguish yourself from that role.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I think he did the role such a disservice.
Yeah.
Because it didn't just detract from the role of the Joker, but also to the movie. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Anyway, look, Suicide Squad 1, I thought was a really, really, really not good, terrible, horrendous movie.
I'm with you.
And two of the shining points from that movie were really Will Smith's Deadshot and Margot Robbie's
Harley
Quinn.
Yeah.
And so Warner Brothers decided, let's pivot. Let's make a Suicide Squad 1.5, which was really the movie, the quote-unquote standalone Harley Quinn movie, which was another team-up movie. And I can't even remember what it was called. Birds of Prey and the Emancipation of One Harleen Quinzel or something like that. So, which also I thought was a really bad movie, despite a very good cast. And then
was Jared Leto on that? Was Jared Leto on that? I can't recall.
He was not. He was implied to have been in that, but he wasn't. There were, there was implications or inferences of him in that, but he was not in that.
Okay.
And then you had the second Suicide Squad movie where they brought in James Gunn to write and direct. And this is when James Gunn had gotten fired from the Marvel Cinematic Universe from the Guardians movies for his past, Twitter comments.
How crazy that he went from MCU to DC.
Yeah.
It was a coup for DC. Moves, right? Not a lot of lateral moves in this industry.
But it was a coup for DC because, he had made a name for himself with Guardians 1 and 2. Really, or maybe not made a name for himself, but certainly brought himself to the public eye.
Yeah.
Because he made some really D-tier characters stand out on the screen and made them an integral part of the MCU. Mm-hmm. And so he was supposed to do the same thing for Suicide Squad. And my frank assessment is while the Suicide Squad, which is officially Suicide Squad 2, was better than the first movie, I still think it wasn't that great. And, what James Gunn's really good at doing is implementing pop culture and references into his movies. So his soundtracks are phenomenal, right?
Sure.
He spends a significant amount of time on choosing the right soundtracks.
Mm-hmm.
And I must say that despite the good soundtrack, you couldn't get away from the fact that it was a really not good movie. Or at least I didn't think it was a good movie. There were some good parts to it, some not good parts to it. What was better about it was that, again, you got to see Peacemaker. You got to see Idris Elba's character. Bloodsport.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
And all these guys got a little bit more depth, again, which was nice. Again, you could see the dynamic of the group was far superior in the Suicide Squad than it was in the first movie. But I still didn't think it was a great movie. I thought it was okay. Action sequences were great. Music was phenomenal. But overall, I'm not a big fan of it.
Do you have something, though, when you watch an MCU movie, any movie, I mean, there's some off-color jokes occasionally, but generally, to the extent that you and I would have a kid, not together, if we would have children, again, not together, and we would take them to the cinema, we would not have to cover their eyes or their ears watching almost any of the MCU movies, right?
Yeah, depending on how conservative you are, I would tend to agree with you.
Whereas Suicide Squad has distinguished itself a little bit, kind of going, I mean, Deadpool is probably the exception, right, in MCU, but Suicide Squad is more along the lines of Deadpool, where it's got a lot of off-color jokes. It's got a lot of, I can't recall if there's vulgarity, but the overall tone is very raunchy, right?
Oh, incredibly so.
And that's kind of how it's distinguished itself, I think, is just by being a more kind of intense, Red Bull-fueled, kind of superhero action movie, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit like the DC's version of Deadpool, which is to say very gory.
Yes.
But it takes it one step further because, they drop a lot of F-bombs.
Yes.
There's a lot of cursing.
Yes.
There's a lot of swearing,
yes,
which Deadpool doesn't have. So it's similar to that in that vein.
Yeah, I don't think in MCU, again, excluding Deadpool, we've ever seen blood. I mean, we've seen characters die, but their skulls have never been ripped open. There's been no guts. I mean, they've all been pretty,
it's almost the PG-13 version of
deaths,
of violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see blood, you do see that, but you don't see gore.
Yeah.
You don't see a person being ripped in half and strands of blood and viscera connecting the two. You don't see anything excessive.
Yeah, and this is
in
more
general.
You're right. And I think Suicide Squad reminded me a lot of The Boys, right, on Amazon, which we both love.
Oh, absolutely.
But that was something where, I mean, there were brain matter and guts, liberally used and spread throughout.
I think it's really interesting you bring that up because if you're going to compare the not Suicide Squad, but the Peacemaker to The Boys, right? Yeah. I actually prefer The Boys, even though in terms of vulgarity, in terms of, let's call it the gross factor, both are on par, right? But for whatever reason it is, I prefer The Boys. And I think it's because I never read the comics for The Boys. I never read any of the graphics novels, so I didn't have any preconceptions of any of the characters.
Yeah.
And The Boys also were not saddled with any kind of history in terms of cinematic history. So when I think of the extended universe of The Peacemaker, I can't help but think of these 2 or 3 terrible movies that preceded it, right? So if The Peacemaker had come out on its own and was a standalone TV series before any of it, I would have thought, actually, I think that's fine, but I think I have a hard time separating the fact that, The Peacemaker is a part of this extended universe, which has a long string of really bad movies behind it. So that even though The Peacemaker overall is much better than those movies, it's hard to pull them out.
Yeah. I mean, do you think either of these is intended to be not a mockery, but kind of like a play on the typical superhero movie. I mean, The Boys is in a way, right? Where it's trying to show kind of the grittiness and the day-to-day lives of so-called superheroes, and some of the problems and the challenges they face. Whereas Suicide Squad doesn't really deal with their day-to-day stuff anymore. It just kind of deals with their attitudes and their behaviors when they're on a mission.
Yeah, I think The Boys is, for me, I think The Boys is the perfect parody of the Justice League.
Yeah, you're right. It's more of a parody.
Which is, it's really good because, and I hesitate to use the word realistic, but if Superman were an all-powerful evil guy, and they ran the Justice League like a business, effectively you would get what The Boys is.
You would get Homelander.
Which is to say, you'd get Homelander. That's exactly right. You would get what The Boys was trying to do, which is to say, hey, we have all these powers. Why don't we start charging people for it? Let's be, a pseudo-governmental or pseudo-non-governmental organization. Yeah. And if you want us to save you, hey, we're happy to do that, but don't be surprised if we send you an invoice for doing that.
Yeah. From that perspective, Suicide Squad is a little bit more maybe realistic in the sense that it's kind of like a covert program, and, they basically take expendable people, right? Yeah. Some of which have... The element of the superpowers, I think, makes it a little bit difficult to reconcile in my mind. But the idea that they take people who are a little bit expendable and they send them into, suicide missions, right, makes a little bit more sense if you're talking about a realistic setting or backdrop.
Yeah, I mean, conceptually, makes total sense. You're serving 200 years, and if you do this mission, we'll knock it down to 150. Yeah. And if you do enough of these, maybe you're out next year, right? Or whatever it is. So conceptually, I'm totally on board. Again, I read the comics. I saw some of the original TV series, like with Amanda Waller in the Batman shows, the animated show in the 90s. So yes, I like it. I get it. It makes sense. So that I have no problem with. Yeah. But I think the show fundamentally... So let's get back to the show, right?
Maybe we can end with how does the Suicide Squad end that bridges the gap between how we get to John Cena in The Peacemaker?
Yeah. So Suicide Squad ends ends with John Cena's character Peacemaker having a showdown with Rick Flag, played by Joel Kinnaman. Yep. And because Peacemaker is all about the mission, and he's even though he's not an army guy, he acts as if he's an army guy, which is to say, Amanda Waller told us this is our mission, America first. We cannot release this information that Rick Flag has found out. And Rick Flag is more about justice, which is to say, hey, America's done some terrible things. We have the evidence here. We need to bring it to public light. Mm-hmm. And Peacemaker says, no, that's not our mission. And we can't let America's reputation get damaged. Yep. They have a shootout, and Peacemaker wins that shootout, right? And Joel Kinnaman, Rick Flag, who's a good guy, effectively gets killed by Peacemaker, who in the movie is not they're all technically bad guys because they're a part of the Suicide Squad. But, he's like an anti-hero, right? Yeah. Which is to say he's not a bad guy. He's doing the things he's doing, or he's done the things that he's done because he thinks it's the right thing to do, right? Yeah. And whether it is the right thing to do or not, that is up for debate. And in his mind, it's not. But ultimately, he ends up killing Joel Kinnaman. Yep. And Idris Elba's character takes him down, and then they have their massive fight against this, walking starfish. Yep. Fine. That's how the movie ends, but that's how Peacemaker's story ends. Mm-hmm. We start the Peacemaker show, flash forward a couple weeks or months or whatever it is, and he's in the hospital, and he's not actually dead. Right. He's been saved, and he's in a hospital, and, he's recovering, and he's on the run because he's no longer, as far as he's aware, he's no longer under Amanda Waller's thumb. Yeah. Right. So he's trying to hide out. And obviously by the end of that episode, we quickly realized that no, everyone knows exactly where he is. Mm-hmm. Amanda Waller has tasked another group of her, I guess, employees or staffers to look out for him and set him on another mission, because they're giving him another chance because of the entire Suicide Squad. He was the only one that was trying to help Amanda Waller's cause.
Yeah, he was dedicated.
Right. And so that's where we start the series or at least that's where we start episode 1. And then the basic premise of the show is that, this task force is assigned to find out and eliminate a threat by these so-called butterflies, which we all, which we all said was going to be a code name, but then of course these guys don't really do code names well. And you find out that there are actually aliens in the shape of butterflies. Who are taking over the bodies of these people.
Yeah.
And they're trying to, do something. We don't know what yet. And we find out towards the end of the season that the butterflies are taking over humans. They're actually a race of aliens that were not abandoned. What's the word? They lost their home planet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they explained it kind of like in the penultimate episode, which is, their planet was destroyed. They destroyed their planet. And they came to Earth because they could inhabit Earth with the same water, the same oxygen needs that they had. So obviously it's a similar climate. And then they kind of saw humans on the same self-destructive course, which has some political, undertones to it in terms of environment and political divisiveness and so forth. And they said, hey, let's just kind of take control and prevent humans from making the same mistakes that we made, right? So that's kind of their justification for inhibiting human bodies in kind of politically prominent positions. And apparently they're trying to change policy, decision-making, blah, 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 right?
Yeah, that's right.
Peacemaker, with his team, which includes now Vigilante, and which includes, Amanda Waller's daughter and 2 or 3 other agents, are tasked then to, find out what's going on with these butterflies and destroy them. I mean, that's pretty much the premise, which is pretty simple and straight to the fact, right? I think that it's not intended to be nuanced or have a lot of double crosses or, big reveals.
Yeah, I mean, although there was a small double cross, not a big one, but a small, or at least a betrayal, because of course Amanda Waller's daughter does ultimately end up betraying Peacemaker in the penultimate or in the 6th episode on the orders of her mother. Mm-hmm. But despite that, they band together as a team. They solve their differences, and they end up, as you would expect, they end up killing
they killed the cow.
The threat. Killed the cow, which was like this. Again, it's kind of like a MacGuffin. It was just this alien that was there to feed the butterflies.
Yeah, I kind of like the fact that this show was, in a way, so unrealistic that it was actually kind of realistic. Does that make sense? I mean,
kind of.
Right? I mean, John Cena as Peacemaker, apart from his helmets, which I'll get to in a moment, doesn't really have any superpowers, right? It's just him and a handful of other kind of agents who are really just there, using their own, their brains, some guns, and their wits, to try to unravel this, the mystery of the butterflies and to try to stop them, right? I mean, the idea of the butterflies is pretty silly. I mean, they fly into someone's mouth, they take over their body, but they retain their memories, they speak in English. But, I mean, the idea that it was so realistic, or so silly that it was almost realistic, to be honest, I was on board with it. I didn't really have any doubts about, this is just so crazy, I can't, buy into it. I was actually okay with it.
So the way I see this series, and I guess we're going to transition into this topic, is that this show for me, at least this season, right? And we say this season because they have just greenlit
another season is coming. Yeah.
Right. So this season for me was not really about the butterflies and the cow for me, the season was really a season-long redemption arc of the Peacemaker, right? Of John Cena's character.
You're right.
Because that's just, it's just a way to get from A to B, or, a few obstacles in between A to B was, these butterflies. But the reality was, you see John Cena, who's this totally not self-aware, head up his own ass character at the beginning of the season, to someone who's a little bit more aware of his actions, a little bit more aware of his feelings. Yeah. And we get a lot of that because of the relationship with his father, who is the T-1000.
Oh, Robert Patrick from the Terminator.
That's right.
From the Terminator. Augie Smith, playing the character of Peacemaker's father, Augie Smith.
Yeah. So, we get to see, who we find out very quickly is a white supremacist. Who's also
apparently a very gifted scientist,
who's like Tony Stark, right? Yeah. I mean, he's like the white racist older version of Tony Stark, who has like this interdimensional closet in his house that he uses as his workshop, and he's the one who's been building these super suits and super powered things for his son. And I thought that we can go through our comments about, what we thought of the show, but I thought the show was just fine without Peacemaker's father as a Tony Stark-like gifted scientist. I found that aspect to be not just unbelievable, but, to be honest, unnecessary. Having him be a bad guy and a white supremacist, there was some storytelling rationale in that, and that was okay. But I mean, the idea that this guy also somehow can create these amazing scientific devices, I thought was just a little bit too far for me. That's my only criticism. I didn't mind it, to be honest. I because again, it wasn't.
It's not central.
It wasn't a very important plot device. Correct. It was just an aspect of this guy's character. Well, the important plot device, or the important facet of his character, was the white supremacist, was the fact that he blames John Cena for killing his elder brother, or his first son, even though it was obviously not his fault. What was important about his character was that it showed you the fractured relationship that John Cena has with his father, and how that affected him growing up, and why he behaves the way he does. Right? And we see that literally in the way that they spar with each other verbally, and then physically, and then ultimately, spoiler alert, John Cena kills him.
He kills him.
Right? They have a standoff. And that's the path. That's the route that we see, right? that Pathfinder takes. Yeah. So that's the journey that Pathfinder takes, or not Pathfinder. Sorry, Peacemaker takes.
So you mentioned his arc, and you just said his path, and I think that's absolutely true. Do you think he is the most nuanced, the most deep superhero in either universe that we've come across?
I think there are others. I think that there are others. Now, I will say, because he's had 8 episodes to show that arc, he's had more screen time than anybody else to do that. But I think, for example, even if looking just at James Gunn's work, I think he did a better job with Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxies and showing his path over the course of 2.5 movies than he has with Peacemaker in 8 episodes. That's not to say that he hasn't shown great emotional depth. He has. But, he's had 8 hours to do it. Star-Lord had, 4 hours to do it.
Yeah. Okay, point taken. But I thought Peacemaker was supremely entertaining. I was really disappointed when episode 8 was finished. What's your criticism? Why aren't you... should we give ratings now, or do you want to wait until the end to give a rating? Because I feel like you and I have different scores in our heads.
Oh, we definitely have different scores in our head. But the rating's very simple for me. I think it's as a standalone show, I think it's a mooch. I think, if you can watch it on somebody else's account, or if you don't have it yourself, I would suggest, sitting with a friend and watching it on theirs. I
am one level higher. I think this is justifies a subscription. I think it's on HBO Plus, And I think that this show,
It is.
I think that this show justifies a subscription to HBO Plus. I thought it was extremely entertaining, very vulgar and raunchy, which, depending upon your living situation, may impact how or when you watch it or where you watch it. But apart from that, I thought it was extremely entertaining. I loved it. I really did. And I'm surprised I loved it, to be honest, because when I watched The Suicide Squad, I didn't feel anything for Peacemaker. I thought it was just a very buffoonish character. I was really sad when he killed Rick Flag. I love Joel Kinnaman. Maybe I love him because of For All Mankind, where he plays Ed, and I've got so much sympathy for him from that series. But I just didn't see any reason why they needed to have a standalone show for Peacemaker. I thought it was just so buffoonish that they would bring him back, and I guess I just kind of thought he was going to be this blunt force. I thought he was basically going to play The Rock in a way, and he was just going to try to smash everything and overpower everything, with his muscles and his size and his girth. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised by how they made him bleed in a way. They showed him in a lot of scrapes. They showed him getting injured. They showed him being clumsy and making mistakes, and
and not just physically, by the way. I think emotionally as well, right?
Yeah.
I think he got cut up and beat up a lot emotionally as well.
Yeah.
So I think this is, and this is nothing against John Cena. He's a very good, or he's a relatively good actor.
Yeah.
He's very charismatic.
Yeah.
But I think that comes down really to James Gunn, where, you can see that the writing quality, if you can look at a character like Peacemaker in The Suicide Squad, who, as you rightly pointed out, was kind of like the comedy sidekick to Idris Elba's character, right? Who was very adept and very good at his job, but was kind of seen as you rightly pointed out, a buffoon, right? An evil buffoon at that.
Yeah.
And you can turn him into this figure that you have empathy for and that you feel bad for and that you want to see succeed. That is a great arc.
Yeah.
Right? And that has a lot to do with the fact that James Gunn was able to write him that well.
But let me also take a moment to praise John Cena, who I'm really a little bit surprised. I mean, of course, the name John Cena is familiar to all of us. I mean, we know him from WWE wrestling and some other movies where he's had either, short parts or cameos, and he's always come across well. But this role as Peacemaker, to me, I mean, it's never going to be an Academy Award, to say the least, role. But honestly, the way that he had to buy into that role, the way that he had to give some of those lines and actions, it's 100%. And it would be so transparent if he wasn't able to really, in some ways, kind of embarrass himself, or act a little bit silly on screen and give it really 100%. There's so many other characters that, to be honest, you or I kind of could have, Economos, right? The computer guy with the beard, right? Yeah. That guy played that role well, for sure. I'm not criticizing him at all. But you and I could have probably played that role. There were no lines that really needed to be emotionally delivered. There was no complicated, story arc or anything. I mean, likable character, great job with it. But you and I could have done that and no one would have been like, my God, where did they get Ethan or Pete? These guys can't act for crap. Whereas the Peacemaker role, the way that he had to just raise his voice, if you look at his facial expressions, he was really all in every single one of those scenes, every single one of those jokes. And I give him a lot of credit because I thought he made it just with his enthusiasm getting behind that character. But there's some things that, when he probably read them on the script, was like, no way, I'm not doing that. Or I have to say that, or I have to act like that. How can I possibly contort my face or my body or my voice or my enthusiasm for such a silly or ridiculous thing,
Right.
And I give him a lot of credit for that.
Absolutely. Look, there's not many actors who's standing
Yeah.
in the middle of a bloodbath
Yeah.
wearing only tidy whiteys and a ridiculous silver helmet and
Yeah.
could pull it off, right? There
Yeah.
aren't that many people.
Yeah.
And he's one of those few, right?
Yeah.
So
Bravo.
you're right. Again,
Yeah.
I don't, which is why I'm saying I don't want to take anything away from John Cena.
Yeah.
He's done a very good job with what he was given,
Yeah.
and not what he was given, because he was given a lot, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of with the role, which is to say that you're going to play this jerk buffoon and transition him from that into through an emotional and physical arc where, you know, people will actually like you by the end of it. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. There's also one other thing. I mean, if you want to give James Gunn a lot of credit, which I think we do, you know, he created a season where we don't, at least I don't have any expectations going into season 2. You know, when we watched, for example, just
totally.
Pick anything that we've seen recently. For All Mankind. What else are we watching? You know, that we've seen the first season. Foundation, for example, right? We've seen the first season, and we're like, look, this is kind of where I think it has to go in season 2, or I'm a little bit worried about this, or why did this character die off, and now, you know, the show's going to be missing this element. You know, and we were either very excited or a little bit hesitant about, you know, the next season based on what we saw, right? And here, I have to say, this storyline was very self-contained, and I feel like they wrapped it up really neatly, and I don't think like there's any baggage that they've carried over to season 2. I feel like season 2 is just going to be an entirely new story if they can kind of keep the same, you know, environment and beat and themes and pace. You know, I'll be very excited about it. Although I would ask you, are you going to be bored if you see a season 2, which is kind of the same as season 1, just a different villain and mission?
And so normally I would have said yes,
Yeah.
I would be bored, but I think based on what they've done with what they did with the first season, I don't think that I'll be bored, only because I'm not going to look at what the second villain is, at what the second season's villain and story arc is going to be for what it is. I would want to do a deeper dive to see what the what the story is actually about, right? I don't think season 1's, while it obviously happened, I don't think season 1 was really about the butterflies.
Yeah.
I think it was about
Amanda Waller.
Peacemaker transitioning, about Peacemaker transitioning, right?
Yeah.
Into and becoming a better person, right? And learning about himself.
Yeah.
That, and you know, maybe forgiving himself for the things that he's done and trying to understand why he can't do those things anymore, right? I think that's what season 1 was about. I think season 2 is going to be a little bit more of that. And my feeling is that, so at the end of season 1, even though we see that he's killed his father, we also see that his father comes back in terms of hallucinations in his mind, right?
As a
like
ghost.
He sees his father.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they're arguing with each other. So he's obviously still playing a role. And then, you know, obviously one of the final scenes of the series was when he's sitting down on his porch drinking a beer and his father joins him. Doesn't say anything, but just sits down with him, right? And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that in season 2. I think it's going to be him coming to terms with his father's death, the fact that he killed his father, potentially any repercussions of that, because, you know, his father was like the equivalent of like whatever the leader of the KKK is called, or, you know, whatever that's called.
Yeah.
The White Dragon, right? So I think there's going to be some repercussion to that, but I think it's going to be more, again, on the emotional or, you know, mental side, which is to say, how do I deal with the fact that I've killed my dad?
So he may also have a girlfriend with Agent Harcourt, right?
With Hardcore,
we saw kind of one of the closing scenes, right, where, you know, she was in a hospital bed and she acknowledged that he was waiting there for her, you know, for days or for weeks. Then they kind of held hands. It kind of, and we saw them kind of, you know, doing a little bit of flirting or admiration for each other, you know, during the season. So that's maybe not a huge surprise. And then we have, you know, Adebayo's mom, right? Viola.
Amanda Waller.
Yeah, Amanda
Viola
Waller.
Davis, yeah.
Viola Davis. I mean, so it seems like there's going to be some type of maybe clash or standoff now between.
There's going to be definitely some kind of repercussion, right? Because Adebayo's mom was basically outed, and this Task Force X or the Suicide Squad was outed. So there's definitely going to be some repercussion to that.
I was just going to say, why was this on? I mean, this is a DC Comics, franchise. Why was this on HBO Max? Is there any?
Because
is there a corporate relationship?
Warner Brothers owns HBO.
Oh, got it.
Okay. So that's why all the Warner Brothers shows are on HBO.
Okay. So what else is going to be spun off? I mean, this has been obviously pretty well received. What do you think they're gonna? I mean, this isn't the first DC show, but what else do you think we're gonna see?
So this is the first DC Extended Universe show. Yeah. This is the first one which acknowledges, and we see that because, of course, there's that somewhat hilarious cameo with Aquaman and the Flash. And at the end,
Aquaman was definitely. We see. Jason Momoa was by face in there. Flash by face,
as was Ezra Miller.
Yep.
Yeah.
Superman was just kind of floating, and we see what we presume is Gal Gadot's
Wonder Woman
silhouette.
Yeah. So those two, I think, were kept in the dark physically only because A, they probably couldn't secure them, and B, they weren't filming anything at the time. Whereas Aquaman 2 is filming right now. It's out at the end of this year. Flash is filming right now. I think it's out also at the end of this year or in the middle of this year. So it made sense for those two to be in there. It also made sense because those two of the four are the more funny characters, or the two characters that are more associated with humor. We don't see Batfleck because Ben Affleck is no longer playing Batman, which is surprising.
We're going to get there.
We are going to get there. We don't see Cavill Superman because Cavill is no longer playing Superman, or theoretically isn't playing Superman. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
And so we don't see Cyborg because Ray Fisher and Warner Brothers are having a massive row at the moment.
Oh, is that true? What is that about?
So Ray Fisher has accused Warner Brothers of sidelining his character due to race reasons. He had massive problems with Joss Whedon on the Justice League set. And then he accused the head of DC as, basically lying to him and being a jackass and this, that. There have been wars. It's been a war of words between the two sides. And, Warner Brothers and DC then hired an independent party to evaluate whether anyone was at fault. They found that Warner Brothers was not at fault. Yeah, it's become a real mess. So I think no matter what, no one would want, on the DC side, no one would want Ray Fisher to come back as Cyborg. I remember there was supposed to be a Cyborg movie, or at least it was announced, and I think that's been canned. And if Cyborg, the character, ever comes back, I doubt it's going to be Ray Fisher. And if it is, it's going to take like a massive understanding between the two of them. So who else? Green Lantern wasn't there because he's not been a part of the DCEU yet. Anyone else we're missing?
So when is the new Aquaman coming out?
I think it's at the end of this year.
Do we need another Aquaman?
I don't, but the DC does, because the DCEU does, because they have all these properties that are sitting there not making any money otherwise.
Are you surprised? Just generally, are you surprised that there are actors who are in both the DC universe and also the Marvel universe? For example, Willem Dafoe. He was in Aquaman, and of course he was in Spider-Man. Right?
Not super surprised. I'm more surprised that there are actors in the Hollywood circle who aren't in either of the universe yet. Right? You'd think by now somebody would have bagged Matt Damon or Ben Affleck. Not Ben Affleck. Sorry, Brad Pitt. And they've made cameos. But they haven't played anyone serious. I mean, I thought Matt Damon's cameo in Thor was hilarious. I thought Brad Pitt's cameo in Deadpool was also hilarious.
Yeah. It's like that John Hamm commercial, right?
Yeah, it's you don't see them in serious roles, so I find that funny. I find it funny that John Hamm isn't in any one of them.
Yeah.
Or in terms of, I'm surprised they haven't used like Helen Mirren in any of them.
Yeah.
So that surprises me more.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so that's the fun trivia fact. That cameo sequence where the Justice League show up at the end of Peacemaker was actually filmed by the Marvel Universe. Marvel shot that for DC because because apparently there's an actor who's in, I think, Doctor Strange 2 that was filming something for the DC Universe, and they needed him to shoot something. And don't quote me on this. I just read this very quickly this morning, and DC agreed to film that for Marvel and send Marvel the film.
I love it. If DC and Marvel can get along, is there not hope for peace in this universe?
I think that's the thing is I think most of the so-called DC versus Marvel animosity actually doesn't come from DC and Marvel.
Yeah, I think
it actually just comes from the fans, right?
Yeah, I think
it comes from diehards, and you can blame me on this as well, but like I think it comes from fans who are just like, no, I think the MCU is far better than the DCEU and so forth. I am very much to blame for that because I agree. I think Marvel movies are far better than DC movies, although on average, if you look at them individually, I think I prefer DC's characters and their comics on an individual basis more than I prefer Marvel's.
I think that might be right, but one of the things that I was like just hit me the other day was that historically, when I think of superheroes, I think first of Superman and then probably Batman/Spider-Man. But I feel that Superman has really been marginalized, not by anything that DC has been doing wrong, but by what Marvel did to really shape how we look at superheroes, right? Superman, if you think of Superman, like, I don't know, the 70s, the 80s, when there was kind of the Christopher Reeve, Superman 1, 2, and 3, right? Lex Luthor and so forth. He was, a man from a different planet, and he was very strong. He could fly, all those kind of like unimaginative superpowers, right? And that was cool. And everyone really bought into him as kind of really the first superhero. And then once, Marvel started making movies, it really shifted kind of the backstory, what we thought about superheroes, what the expectations were. And that Christopher Reeve's, Superman, who was played by a few other people by that time, just kind of lost, I think, our imagination. And he didn't really have a good foil. And I think that at least that character for me is really struggling. And we've seen that kind of in, the DC world, is that there's just struggling to kind of find what is the right role for Superman. So I think this is because of the, really what Marvel has done to kind of, evolve superheroes rather than anything that DC has done, like any missteps they've done for Superman.
So I think that what Marvel did on screen, and I'm not going to comment on the comics, but I think what Marvel did on screen was to quote unquote humanize superheroes, right? They each have their flaws. They have their foibles. They're not perfect, right? Which is great. Tony Stark is a narcissist. He's a jackass. He's arrogant, and he pays for those consequences, right? Yeah. There are consequences to his actions, and he pays that bill, right? Superman, I think, has suffered for two reasons, right? One, initially, at least in the comics, he was like the perfect superhero. Yeah. No flaws except for kryptonite, which was, they had, and you're right. His main bad guys was a bald white man who has it out for aliens with Lex Luthor, and that's it, right? And then the second thing was that in the movies, anyway, the movie adaptations haven't been that great. I'm talking post Christopher Reeves, right? Yeah. In the more, let's call it the modern era, which may not be fair to say, but let's call it the modern era. The movies haven't been that good, And it's just because of that, I think most people think that, oh, well, why do I want to see a bad movie, right? Or a bad superhero adaptation? They're not exciting to watch. And because of that, everyone's a bit like, well, this is not really, fun. I don't really care for Superman. Whereas in the comics, from what I understand, and I haven't read many of the new ones, so DC relaunched the Superman and reimagined the Superman comics.
Oh, really?
And where they gave him a little bit more flaws, where, they've humanized him a lot more. And that has been interesting. And then there have been some spin-offs and some one-shots, which have been wonderful. Red Sun. Imagine if Superman had landed in the middle of Soviet Russia instead of Kansas.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah, you're right.
Or the one where he plays
remember Bizarro Superman? Yeah.
Oh, then there's the Bizarro Superman. And then what if Superman were Richard Nixon's right-hand man or right-hand enforcer, and Batman was, the vigilante that he goes after. So they did a lot of things in the comics that haven't translated over onto the screen. And they've tried to, but no matter what, for whatever reason, they haven't been able to pull it off. Right? The first Justice League the first Superman Returns, what was it? Man of Steel.
Yep.
Right? The first Henry Cavill movie.
Yep.
Right? Terrible. It had the potential. I still think Henry Cavill is a great Superman. In terms of physique, in terms of acting, in terms of everything, I think he's perfect. But I think they really wrecked it for that. In the sequel, they introduced Batman and made it a Batman versus Superman movie, which is fine, except they hadn't set up Ben Affleck's movie. They hadn't really set up Superman as we know him in the comics. So that was a terrible, dark, blurry mess. The Justice League, the less we talk about the Justice League, the better. They've never given any of the characters a chance to really shine until Wonder Woman 1, which I thought was very good. Wonder Woman 2, same problem. I didn't like it. To a lesser extent, Aquaman, it's done really well. I thought in the box office, not my bag. I didn't really like it. I didn't think it was that great. The Flash movie, to be seen, but it depends, because the problem with DC is they can't help themselves. They have so many great IPs and they can't help but seeing like, oh, well, Marvel's already doing all these crossover movies. We have to do the same.
Yeah.
They forget that Marvel also spent 15 years building their universe by releasing one individual movie at a time and being very meticulous about it.
That's Pete, actually, that's very good, it's kind of corporate advice, right? Which is stop looking what your competitor is doing and defining yourself by what they're doing and trying to emulate them or copycat them. And you're absolutely right that they're totally different characters with different backgrounds. They don't need to just go out and do the exact same thing, which is one of the reasons that I think kind of Suicide Squad and Peacemaker worked, because it's something a little bit different than what MCU is doing, rather than like what you said, just putting Justice League together and saying, hey, this is our version of the Avengers, right? That's never going to go well.
Compare Moon Knight to Batman, right?
What's Moon Knight?
Some people would argue Moon Knight, Marvel's Moon Knight's played by Oscar Isaac. Oh. It's the new superhero series. It's just coming out now. I think it'll be out in maybe a couple weeks. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on the release date. But in the comics, everyone has always called Moon Knight Marvel's Batman, right? No one ever calls Batman DC's Moon Knight.
You're right.
But in any case, Moon Knight is similar to Batman, which is to say, on paper at least, very similar. If not the same, very similar. And look at what they're doing for Moon Knight, which is to say, hey, we're going to introduce this new character into this universe. Instead of doing a movie and then putting him out into this universe, he's got a very intricate background. Let's do it over 6 to 8 episodes on the TV series and then promote him into the movie universe. Yeah. And everyone knows the story of Batman. Don't get me wrong. I am sick and tired of seeing Batman's parents getting killed in an alley behind behind the theater. It's been done to death, right? Yeah. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you can just throw him into a movie with Superman and be like, well, everyone's prepared for this. That's not how it works. They should have had a standalone Batman movie. They should have been very careful about bringing up that past. The one reason I liked what they did with the Spider-Man movies, the new Tom Holland one, is that we didn't have to relive Uncle Ben dying in any of them. They changed up the formula a bit. And over the three, you do see Aunt May die in the third one. That's fine. But and that's her Uncle Ben moment, the so-called Uncle Ben moment. Mm-hmm. But they changed it up. They they looked at the formula. They changed it up because they realized, hey, everyone's seen this 3 times before, 4 times before. Everyone knows this now. We don't need to rehash this, right? Let's reinvigorate it. Let's move on from that. But DC has never given its characters that chance to really do justice to their own individual characters.
I'm looking at this image or this slide, I should say, of all the different characters who have played Superman. There's a surprising number of Supermen, right? Like you mentioned Smallville.
Yeah, if you include the TV shows, there'll be lots, yeah.
I mean, so from the modern times, there's Christopher Reeve, right? Which is iconic. Then there was Dean Cain, who kind of did the reboot, the TV series Lois and Clark. And Dean Cain, I think, was maybe generally well accepted, but I think that was more about romance than the superhero elements. Then there's a guy named John Newton, Gerard Christopher, Tom Welling, Brandon Routh, and then we get to
Brandon Routh.
Then we get to Henry Cavill, right? So that's a lot of, the period of time is dramatic, but none of those guys have ever kind of made their mark on Superman, and it's all these kind of like Smallvilles and Supergirl kind of ancillary offshoots, right? Which maybe was an interesting strategy, but it kind of watered down what we thought of Superman. Whereas the Batman,
and it doesn't allow for you to create a unified universe.
Yeah, I agree. I think Henry Cavill actually did a pretty good job of, giving some identity to Superman. I didn't love his movies, but I thought at least I identified kind of with him as a character, and I thought that he kind of had the right, let's say, like, attitude or disposition.
Exactly. I think in terms of disposition was absolutely right. I think that's exactly the right way to say it.
He's not jokey. He's not too serious. He's not funny. But, he wasn't too stiff. He's about right for what you'd expect as that character, right?
Yeah. Quiet without seeming indifferent.
Yeah.
Strong while still exuding innocence. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until you get to Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
Until you get to the Justice League, where you see it kind of goes off the rails there. And that has everything to do with writing and with, and I don't want to blame him, but I have to blame him, Zack Snyder's vision, which is let's go the Christopher Nolan route. Let's make this dark. Let's make this gritty. Let's make this a realistic Superman. Let's talk about, and that's fine. Don't get me wrong. Make him dark and gritty when he needs to be. But Superman is supposed to be like this beacon of light and this beacon of hope in this world, right? Yeah. When you think of Superman, you don't think of a dark character. When you think of dark characters, you think of Batman. Yeah. You don't think of Superman. Superman's supposed to be this guy who's wearing a bright blue unitard and, everyone loves him.
Absolutely.
So I don't need to see Superman portrayed as a Jesus-like figure, which he was in Zack Snyder's thing. He's a god by his own right, right? I don't need the parallels and the allegories. I don't need any of that stuff. I need him to just be Superman, and the Superman that we all know and love from the comics.
Are you expecting him to make a cameo in upcoming Aquaman? Like, if we're looking for where we will see Superman next, it's still Henry Cavill, right?
So
is it?
At the moment, it's really... So even Henry Cavill doesn't know if he's going to be Superman or not, because Warner Brothers hasn't officially announced one way or another if they're doing anything else with Superman. Oh. And they certainly haven't announced if they're doing anything with Henry Cavill. So I think the fans would all, because Henry Cavill's been on a tear with like
The Witcher.
in terms of fans.
Oh man, he's
The
on a tear with
Witcher,
The Witcher, right?
So all these guys now obviously want him to come back,
Yeah.
but since the Justice League came out, there's been a clear shift in the DC philosophy, right? In terms of how they're making their movies. I suspect that Flashpoint is going to open up the door to the multiverse in the DC universe, the new Flash movies.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to allow them to, if they choose to, reboot with a new character or reintroduce. That'll give them the option.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they've got so much brand equity with Henry Cavill. I by no means have this man crush on him, like we've seen with some of the other people that you and I like, but I feel like he plays that character well, and I identify him with a character. So for me to kind of now shift gears and find that there's a new Superman, I mean, I guess it depends who they cast, but for me, it's going to be super difficult.
Yeah, there's going to be backlash no matter what, because the fans will want him to come back.
Yeah. On the other hand, if you think about it this way, Pete, like how long is Henry Cavill going to play that role? I mean, if you're really going to say, all right, let's, take Superman in this direction, and this is kind of like you mentioned, like it took MCU 15 years to kind of establish their franchise. If you're looking for someone to play that role, just like Tom Holland has played Spider-Man in now, 3 movies and probably going to do several others. If you're kind of looking for that, 10-year runway, it may not be Cavill, right?
It could be if they get their acts together.
Yeah.
He's still a young guy. He's still in his 30s. He could easily do it for another 10 years. Yeah. Whether he wants to or not is a different matter. Yeah. But he's a young guy. He's in good shape. He's, all the other movies he's done in the meantime have also required him to be in that kind of shape, to be that strong guy. He hasn't lost any mass. He's still that same charismatic guy.
You know how old he is? How old is he? You guess.
I have no idea, but I imagine he's got to be like mid-30s at most, or let's say around, not too far from us. I'd say he's in his late 30s at most.
Turning 39.
Yeah, there you go.
Turning 39.
Turning 39, so he's what, in his 82, 83 years, 1982, 1983. Yeah. So he's still got, I don't know if he's got 10 years, but he's certainly got at least another 5 or 6 in it. Easily.
Yeah. Wow, he's been playing that role for quite some time then, huh? When do you think he started that? When was the first one?
I think 2013.
It was probably about,
I think Superman
8 years ago, right?
Yeah, something like that. So 8-10 years ago.
Yeah. Man of Steel was 2013.
There you go. So I think they squandered him. Yeah. My feeling is that they squandered his potential. Which, again, it comes down to the fact that they didn't have that beautiful mind style bulletin board where they have, or that conspiracy theory bulletin board where they're saying, okay, this movie leads to this, and they tie it with a string and they move on. They never did that. Kevin Feige was very strict with himself. Yeah. And there have been times where people have said, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. But they stuck to their guns. And, after 20 years, everyone said, you know what? You did the right thing. They've earned the right to do whatever they want now with whoever they want now, because they've said, hey, you can trust us. We're not going to screw this up. So that's my feeling on the DC Extended Universe and on Henry Cavill, and funnily enough, also on the Peacemaker.
So, Pete, what I think this needs, we've gone a lot into Superman. What is coming out soon is the Batman. I think we need our own episode just to go through the history of the different Batmans and the different, TV shows from Adam West and then the 5 or 7 movies to follow that, right? And then maybe we need to look forward to, what's coming up with Robert Pattinson playing the Batman.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be wonderful. I have high hopes for the Pattinson movie.
As do I. And a few years ago, I would not have found myself saying that, I have to say. I've surprised myself, and my hat is off to Pattinson, for totally changing my mind of how I perceived him as an actor, to the extent that I'm actually excited, to see that movie, which is coming out. Is it out now? It's coming out this week? It's out in some places,
no,
right?
first week of March. I think it's the first week of March. I don't know if it's out early anywhere else, but I believe in most major markets, it comes out the first weekend of March. Anyway, to recap, Peacemaker, I give it a mooch.
I give it a subscribe.
There you have it, folks.
There you have it. So let's see if we can change your mind after season 2 comes out. But season 2, since season 1 just ended, can we say that it's probably going to be like another at least 9 to 12 months before season 2 is out?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay.
In any case, if you have any thoughts or comments on The Peacemaker,
love to hear them.
filmsandstuffpodcast@gmail.com.
We'll see you on the flip side. Thank you, Pete.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.